And we're continuing with the Mystery of Marie Rogêt by Edgar Allan Poe. We are still listening to Augustin Dupin explain why the article about a drowned body was incorrect, basically saying that it could drown by filling with water, but float by filling with gas, and we will pick up from there. And furthermore, it is exceedingly improbable, continues our journal, that any villains who had committed such a murder as is here supposed would have thrown the body in without weight to sink it, when such a precaution could have so easily been taken. Observe here the laughable confusion of thought. No one, not even L'Etoile, disputes the murder committed on the body found. The marks of violence are too obvious. It is our researcher's object merely to show that this body is not Marie's. He wishes to prove that Marie is not assassinated, not that the corpse was not. Yet his observation proves only the latter point. Here is a corpse without weight attached. Murderers, casting it in, would not have failed to attach a weight. Therefore, it was not thrown in by murderers. This is all which is proved, if anything is. The question of identity is not even approached, and L'Etoile has been at great pains merely to gainsay now what it has admitted only a moment before. We are perfectly convinced, it says, that the body found was not that of a murdered female, nor is this the sole instance, even in this division of his subject, where our researcher unwittingly reasons against himself. His evident object, I have already said, is to reduce as much as possible the interval between Marie's disappearance and the finding of the corpse. Yet we find him urging the point that no person who saw the girl from the moment of her leaving her mother's house. We have no evidence, he says, that Marie Rogêt was in the land of the living after 9 o'clock on Sunday, June the 22nd. As his argument is obviously an ex parte one, he should at least have left this matter out of sight. For had anyone been known to see Marie, say on Monday or on Tuesday, the interval in question would have been much reduced, and by his own raticonation, the probability much diminished of the corpse being that of the grisette. It is nevertheless amusing to observe that L'Etoile insists upon its point in the full belief of its furthering its general argument. Reperuse now the portion of this argument which has reference to the identification of the corpse by Bouvez. In regard to the hair upon the arm, L'Etoile has been obviously disingenuous, and Bouvez, not being an idiot, could never have urged in identification of the corpse simply hair upon the arm. No arm is without hair. The generality of the expression of L'Etoile is mere perversion of the witness's phraseology. He must have spoken of some peculiarity of this hair. It must have been a peculiarity of color or quality or length or of situation. Her foot, says the journal, was small. So are thousands of feet. Her garter is no proof whatever, nor is her shoe, for shoes and garters are sold in packages. The same may be said of the flowers in her hat. One thing upon which M. Bouvez strongly insists is that the clasp of the garter found had been set back to take it in. This amounts to nothing, for more women find it proper to take a pair of garters home and fit them to the size of the limbs they are to encircle, rather than try them in the store where they purchase. Here it is difficult to suppose the researcher in earnest. Had M. Bouvez, in his search for the body of Marie, discovered a corpse corresponding in general size and appearance to the missing girl, he would have been warranted, without reference to the question of habiliment at all, in forming an opinion that his search had been successful, if, in addition to the point of general size and contour, he had found upon the arm a peculiar hairy appearance, which he had observed upon the living Marie, his opinion might have been justly strengthened, and the increase of positiveness might well have been in the ratio of peculiarity or unusualness of the hairy mark. If the feet of Marie being small, those of the corpse were also small, the increase of probability that the body was that of Marie would not be an increase in a ratio merely arithmetical, but in one highly geometrical or accumulative. Add to all this shoes, such as she had been known to wear upon the day of her disappearance, and although these shoes may be sold in packages, you so far augment the probability as to verge upon the certain. What of itself would be no evidence of identity becomes, through its corroborative position, proof most sure. Give us, then, flowers in the hat corresponding to those worn by the missing girl, and we seek for nothing farther. If only one flower we seek for nothing farther. What then, if two or three or more? Each successive one is multiple evidence, proof not added to proof, when multiplied by hundreds or thousands. Let us now discover upon the deceased garters such as the living used, and it is almost folly to proceed, but these garters are found to be tightened by the setting back of the clasp in just such a manner as her own had been tightened by Marie shortly previous to her leaving home. It is now madness or hypocrisy to doubt. What Leatol says in respect to this aberration of the garters being an unusual occurrence shows nothing beyond his own pertinacity in error. The elastic nature of the clasp garter is self-determination of the unusualness of the aberration. What is made to adjust itself must of necessity require foreign adjustment, but rarely. It must have been an accident in the strictest sense that these garters of Marie needed the tightness described. They alone would have amply established her identity, but it is not that the corpse was found to have the garters of the missing girl, or found to have her shoes, or her bonnet, or the flowers of her bonnet, or her feet, or a peculiar mark upon the arm, or her general size and appearance. It is that the corpse had each and all collectively. Could it be proved that the editor of Leatol has really entertained a doubt under the circumstances? There would be no need in his case for a commission de lunatico inquirendo. He has thought it sagacious to echo the small talk of the lawyers, who for the most part content themselves with echoing the rectangular precepts of the courts. I would here observe that very much of what is rejected as evidence by a court is the best evidence to the intellect, for the court, guiding itself by the general principles of evidence, and the recognized and booked principles, is averse from swearing at particular instances, and this steadfast adherence to principle, with a rigorous disregard of the conflicting exception, is a sheer mode of attaining the maximum of attainable truth in any long sequence of time. The practice en masse is therefore philosophical, but is not the less certain that it engenders vast individual error. A theory based on the qualities of an object will prevent its being unfolded according to its objects, and he who arranges topics in reference to their causes will cease to value them according to their results. Thus the jurisprudence of every nation will show that when law becomes a science and a system, it ceases to be justice. The errors into which a blind devotion to principles of classification has led the common law will be seen by observing how often the legislature has been obliged to come forward to restore the equity its scheme has lost. Landor. In respect to the insinuations levelled at Beauvais, you will be willing to dismiss them in a breath. You have already fathomed the true character of this good gentleman. He is a busybody, with more of romance and little of wit. Any one so constituted will readily so conduct himself upon occasion of real excitement as to render himself liable to suspicion on the part of the over-acute or the ill-disposed. M. Beauvais, as it appears from your notes, had some personal interviews with the editor of l'Atoll, and offended him by venturing an opinion that the corpse, notwithstanding the theory of the editor, was in sober fact that of Marie. He persists, says the paper, in asserting the corpse to be that of Marie. He cannot give a circumstance in addition to those which we have commented upon to make others believe. Now, without re-adverting to fact that stronger evidence to make others believe could never have been adduced, it may be remarked that a man may very well be understood to believe in a case of this kind without the ability to advance a single reason for the belief of a second party. Nothing is more vague than impressions of individual identity. Each man recognizes his neighbor, yet there are few instances in which any one is prepared to give a reason for his recognition. The editor of l'Atoll had no right to be offended at M. Beauvais's unreasoning belief. The suspicions, circumstances which invest him will be found to tally much better with my hypothesis of romantic busybodydom than with the reasoner's suggestion of guilt. Once adopting the more charitable interpretation, we shall find no difficulty in comprehending the rose in the keyhole, the Marie upon the slate, the elbowing the male relatives out of the way, the aversion to permitting them to see the body, the caution given to Madame B. that she must hold no conversation with the Gendarme until his return, Beauvais, and lastly, his apparent determination that nobody should have anything to do with the proceedings except himself. It seems to me unquestionable that Beauvais was a suitor of Marie's, that she coquetted with him, and that he was ambitious of being thought to enjoy her fullest intimacy and confidence. I shall say nothing more upon this point, and as the evidence fully rebuts the assertions of l'Atoll touching the matter of apathy on the part of the mother and other relatives, an apathy inconsistent with the supposition of their believing the corpse to be that of the perfumery girl, we shall now proceed as if the question of identity were settled to our perfect satisfaction. And what, I here demanded, do you think of the opinions of Les Commerciaux? And there we will pause.